Good afternoon, everyone. Before we begin this video, I would like to suggest you all to comment, like, and subscribe to the Perludem YouTube channel. Now, my name is Raafi Seiff, and I am a researcher at the Joko Sutono Research Center, Faculty of Law, Universitas Indonesia. I'm joined by my guest today, Mr. Yoes Chandra Kenawas, who is a PhD candidate at Northwestern University in the United States. Now, speaking of America, from the Kennedys to the Clinton couple to the Bush family tree, political families have been a subject of admiration, anger, but oftentimes also fascination. No exception should be given for the case of Indonesia, where the political landscape boasts their own share of political dynasties. With the regional elections coming up on the 23rd of September 2020, the issue of family ties and political bloodlines have resurfaced again, with 270 areas encompassing 9 provinces, 224 districts, and 37 cities across 32 provinces. Now that's a mouthful of areas. It will definitely perhaps shape or maintain the political map of the country. Many have stated that the family members of Indonesia's political elite will enter the fray, and indeed, this phenomena is also something that we see in Asia and around the world. This episode of Election and Democracy Talk will seek to dissect the anatomy of a political dynasty and the influence it has towards the regional election in our theme today, Family Ties, Regional Elections and Political Dynasties in Indonesia. Good afternoon, Pak Yoes. It's nice to have you here.
Good afternoon. Thanks for having me here.
Yes. So, for our viewers, could you perhaps tell us what exactly is a political dynasty?
So, political dynasty, in a very simple sense, is where at least there are 2 members of the same family who occupy an elected office, whether it's in legislative or in executive branch of the government. So that's the basic operational definition of a political dynasty. So if for example, the father is a governor and the son succeed him as the governor in the next elections, or if the son wins the what we call it, like sub-regional elections,
the
district level elections, then we can count that as one political dynasties. Yeah.
And in this case, what situation or circumstance can enable political dynasties to otherwise flourish and grow?
It's my research now. I'm still figuring out why dynastic politics flourish after the fall of authoritarian government in 1998, especially after the introduction of direct elections. But to put it as an introduction, the change in the institutional settings at the subnational level, in this sense I mean the introduction of direct local elections, allow some local elites to build political dynasties at the subnational level. Of course, we will talk about resources that the family have, the network that they build over time. But right now, the most important thing that can explain why the political dynasty in Indonesia flourish after the fall of Soeharto is the change at the institutional level, especially when the one that governs how we elect our local leader. Yeah.
But isn't it interesting in a sense when we talk about 98 that in order for a political dynasty to fall, the Suhartos, another political dynasty should in a sense step in, and it becomes a sort of revolving door. We have the Suhartos, and after that I wouldn't count the Habibie family as a political dynasty, but perhaps the Wahids, and then after that the Sukarno family. So it's interesting to see that political dynasties have such a long lifespan in different situations, whether it's in authoritarianism under the Suharto era and the New Order, and now even in the era of Reformation. What do you think of that?
So we have to analytically, we have to divide that into two levels. One is political dynasties that emerge at the national level, the one that you talk about, the Suhartos, the Sukarnos, the Yudhoyonos,
The
right?
Yudhoyonos.
And now maybe the Jokowis.
Who
family,
knows?
Who knows, right? That's the first one. The second one is the one at the subnational level. At the national level, the explaining factors to the emergence of dynastic politics at the national level is quite different from the subnational level. At the national level, because of the media coverage, because of indirect interaction between the political dynasties and the people,
The constituents.
it influenced how they survive over time. So I can say that at the national level, the brand name advantage of a family is the most important thing that can explain why political dynasties keep emerging at the national level. And also, of course, they have their resources that they accumulate over time. And these all, not all people can build the same amount of resources. Not all people can build the same vast network that they have built over time, right? So, of course, the political game at the national level is indeed occupied by a very small number of elites, and they have built their political career since decades ago. So yeah.
So what determines their political capital are a number of factors, and mostly it comes from their brand name. At the end of the day, they are a brand, the shadow of their forefathers or their generational family members in the past have elevated their status, and we see that in we see that as an example of Megawati Sukarnoputri's rise in 1999 to the 2000s under the shadow of her father. So perhaps it's also that they also command masses, and perhaps could it be possible that they command several areas in particular? In a certain way, for example, the Sukarno family are very strong in Java, particularly when it comes to the Solo area, the Jogja area. So do these political families, besides their brand name, also have their own, let's say, base camp of voters?
I think for some families, yes. So the problem is one of the most influential family, the Abdurrahman Wahid's family. They not control, but very influential in East Java,
exactly,
right?
Yes.
But none of Abdurrahman Wahid's daughters are contesting in elections. Even when Abdurrahman Wahid's brother contested in, I forget, 2004 election
for the governor.
Yeah, the late, not the governor, the presidency.
Oh yes.
The late Gus Solah.
Yes.
He failed to win the elections and defeated by Yudhoyonos, right? So yes, in some part of the countries, there's some intersection between party loyalty in one areas to their loyalty to certain political dynasties. But Indonesia's politics is very fluid over time, and we still need to see how the situation will develop in the future, right? So let's say after Megawati left politics in maybe the next.
Do you have a specific date? Do you know?
In the future, right? Can her daughters or sons
continue the legacy? Do they have the power to continue?
Can they maintain the loyalty of their grassroots base, right? That's a big question for Megawati's family, for the Sukarno dynasties. But will they be involved in politics in the future? Sure, they will keep maintaining their influence in politics in the future, but to what extent is Puan going to win the presidency? There's a big question on that.
Exactly. We can come back again to the Suharto family. When President Suharto's power diminished nationally. In a sense, almost gradually, so did the children. So it's interesting to see whether that's going to happen in the near future for other political families or not. Will the matriarch or patriarch, when they're gone, are they able to maintain the masses, the influence, and the charisma that they're able to have? But going from Indonesia, I'd like to hop into politics in the United States, because the United States have their own share of political dynasties, modern American political dynasties. We have the Clintons, we have the Bushes, the Trumps perhaps, we don't know. Well, a little bit, if it's the Trumps. People often forget that in 2016, media pundits were stating that it was going to be another Clinton-Bush rematch. That didn't happen. In 2016, Clinton got the nomination, but lost to a political outsider, Donald Trump. How would we characterize the situation? Why did this happen? Why did the party why was what was called the party of Bush? How come it would fail and nominate someone like President Donald Trump? And why an operation as big as the Democratic Party could not assist the Clintons, or rather Hillary Clinton, in winning the presidency?
So it's a very complex situation, right? So we have
Let's
to
forget about the Russians for a second.
we have to dissect the problem into pre-nomination and after the nomination, right? The pre-nomination, the party institutions, both in Democratic Party or in the Republican, they have this mechanism called caucus, convention, primaries, and it's a quite fair battleground for the candidates, for all candidates, not only for those who have brand names like or networks like Bushes or the Clintons, right? In the end, yes, the Clintons won the nomination for Democrat, but not for Jeb Bush in Republican. He lost from Donald Trump, right? But again, in that sense, we can see that having a brand name advantage, having a political network, having money or capital behind the individual, right? It's not a guarantee.
It has its limits.
That they will succeed in winning the race. So I think it's a good example where when you have a good party institution or party institutionalization, then you will have a fair ground, or a level playing ground for all candidates to compete. Yes, Bush will lead. Initially, Bush will lead the popularity contest, but in
because
the end,
of brand name only. Perhaps.
Because of the brand name, but in the end, we saw what happened, right? Trump won the nomination and eventually won the presidency, and it's after the nomination process, the issue with Clinton, it's not that she lost. It's because of the electoral college, right? She won the popular vote. But again, institutions or electoral regulations play an important role in helping or discouraging political dynasties to win the election. So a lot of problems there.
But would you say that means that the American political system is actually quite neutral in the sense that it gives a fair chance for other charismatic candidates to appear? Like we can see in 2008, it might seem a little bit of a deja vu for Hillary Clinton, how Barack Obama, who was at that time a political nobody, a young senator, was able to even get the superdelegates that were aligned to Clinton. So that would be a probable smack in the face, but it does paint a picture how maybe perhaps brand image could become the stage, but the candidate really does matter. The charisma of the candidate.
The charisma of the candidate matters, and again, in the States, I cannot say that in the States it's a fair ground for everyone.
I see.
Because again, the number of elites are still very quite deeply entrenched in American political system, right? But once a while, individual like Barack Obama can come to the national spotlight. Once a while, individual like AOC, Ocasio-Cortez can come into the spotlight. So yes, the system maybe it's quite difficult for nobody or just normal people to enter the system, but the case of the Obama case and the Ocasio-Cortez case suggests that there's a chance for them to enter the elite circulation.
So there is like a silver lining, or perhaps in the United States there is this underbelly, which is the populist movement, and if you can tap into that populist movement, perhaps you can shift the scales. Like for example, how you can see in the Bernie Sanders campaign right now, it's gaining momentum, the Barack Obama campaign in 2008. So it's a number of factors, as you stated. Because we can't discount the power of super PACs, especially with especially with the Bloomberg entry in the race, which could perhaps, it's not about Bloomberg winning the race, but it's about Sanders losing the race. So there might be a lot of complexities as well in the American system. But going back to the idea of political dynasties, it's interesting that Donald Trump has stated that he wanted to, per se, drain the swamp. But at the end of the day, he instilled elites of the Republican parties and even borrowed into the Clinton political dynasty handbook, which is by appointing his children and or son-in-law as advisors to the president. What do you make of this? Is appointing family members just a temptation that can't be dealt with?
This
is it too tempting?
It's a very good question, actually. Why a leader choose their family members, right, to support or to continue their power? And I'm still struggling with this question, like to answer this question. But based on my current research, it's not that because it's driven by the temptation, but it's just the necessity to get the job done. Sometimes it's very simple like that. You know, the reason is quite simple like that. Or sometimes when, especially if you are newbie in politics, right? You need to be surrounded by people
who are 100% loyal.
And family is
always on the top
of the list, right? Of course, based on my research also, I also found that not all family like that, right? Sometimes
they can hinder the process.
It's true.
It's interesting to also see, for example, like in the past we had Bobby Kennedy as Attorney General when President Kennedy was in office. So do political dynasties, in your view, inspire each other? By seeing president, does it allow a huger allowance, or perhaps the public, having known that there is a history of political dynasties, have in a sense accepted this situation?
Maybe if you say inspire each other, I don't think so. They inspire each other, but it's just driven by the necessity, the political necessity, the strategic calculation of the individual, of the patriarch or the matriarch, right, or the politician. But on the other side, so we talk about the supply side from the elite level, from the voter level, from the mass level. Apparently, people are quite permissible to political dynasties. You know, like for them, it's not a taboo to build political dynasties, and the explanations can be quite a lot. Some people, especially some theorists, would say Oh, it's because the rest of the masses are do not have a good education or knowledge to run the government. So just specific kind of family who has the experience, the socialization in the family can run the government. But the bottom line is, I think public are quite permissible to having people appointing their family member in top positions. Is it ethically good, or is it ethical, or because we can count it as nepotism, right? Yes, it is not good, but the institutions allow that to happen. The logic of power of the individual drive their behavior to do such kind of thing. So yes, it's not good in normative sense, but practically that's the most rational thing that a leader can do to protect their power and prolong their power.
So then at the end of the day, sometimes it's also about political calculations.
Yeah.
How one, it's not really necessarily against the law to appoint people at the executive level who are family members, although there might be political pros and cons. I think it's about weighing in the political pros and cons. Do they outweigh the negative sentiments? But okay, do you have something to add?
There's a very interesting case in the Philippines. In the Philippines Constitution, 1987 or 1989, I forget, the Philippines Constitution after Marcos, there's an article that's saying it's basically anti-dynastic clause
in the Constitution of the Philippines.
But there's until now
there's no enforcement.
There's no enforcement on that. And if you know that in Southeast Asia, the most dynastic country is the Philippines so far, right? And Indonesia is catching.
we're building our resume.
Yeah.
But going to the Philippines, again, it seems like the public has a relatively short-lived memory of the atrocities of the Marcos presidency, electing later Senator Bongbong Marcos. So is this the same case in the Philippines? Does the brand name play a big part, or what's the factor?
Yeah,
in this? Is there a specific factor in the Philippines?
I think okay, the brand name is one thing, and the ways in which the family maintain the patronage over time, maintain the loyalty of their voters over time, is also quite important that we need to take into account, and that could explain why in countries like Philippines, even in Indonesia, Suharto still. Some people
his image still looms.
Yeah, still looms, and in every elections we will talk about.
Resurface again.
Yeah, Suharto, right? Yeah.
And if I'm not mistaken, there was a recent newspaper article from the Jakarta Post that states that President Suharto is #1 in the list of favored presidents, with President Jokowi going in second place.
Yeah, because it's very interesting because the legacy of authoritarianism persists 20 years after he stepped down from the office, right? And it's very difficult for a nation to wash out their authoritarian legacy and
the propaganda that
has been instilled for 3 decades, right? And we need more time to completely wash out that influence or legacy.
Do you believe that some political dynasties, in a sense, are necessary because of the support they can give to one another, as perhaps as husband and wife? Like, for example, Bill Clinton once said in a campaign, "When you elect me, you get 2 for the price of 1." Is that something that we see in Asia as well? Perhaps we can draw into Malaysia now with Deputy Prime Minister Wan Aziza.
I'm not so sure about Malaysia's case because I'm not following Malaysian politics quite closely, but based on my research in Indonesia, I think yes, the support of family members is very important to maintain the continuity of the political dynasty or the the power of that family, right? So I think it's quite difficult for me to imagine if a son run for an election denying his dad or his mother influence or support, because people, again, the brand name theory, right? People knows the family name based on the father or mother legacy. Yeah.
So hopping into Indonesia,
Hmm.
are there any specific political characteristics that we see for Indonesia when it comes to political dynasties?
Are we talking about the subnational level?
Yes,
dynasty?
perhaps.
Okay. The quite specific things about dynasty politics in Indonesia. Okay, based on my research, apparently,
And you are researching about the current regional elections and
Yeah.
how it affects to political dynasties.
yeah, based on my research, it's quite difficult actually to build political dynasties.
Mm.
So, based on my data from 2015 to 2018 elections, right? There are like around 210 attempts to build political dynasty,
Mm.
but only 105 succeed, and the other
In Indonesia.
in Indonesia,
I see.
and the other 105 lost the election.
Mm.
So it's now the number is quite good, like 50-50. But what I'm quite worried about Indonesia is the growth rate of the political dynasty, the number of political dynasties at the subnational level. So back in 2010, we only have like 60 perhaps, but now we're seeing 100 plus political dynasties at the subnational level in Indonesia, and that, if we do not count those who are running also in legislative elections, if you count that, and the number will be quite big. And I don't have the number yet, but
Like for example, in the city council level as well,
yeah,
perhaps.
or in on the provincial council. Yeah.
But in this sense, do you believe that political dynasties hinder democracy or perhaps hinder development?
That's a very difficult question to answer again, because I don't have the empirical
data is quite
data
complex.
to support that, because it's in some countries or in some areas, dynastic politics can be seen as some guarantee to stability, right? And to the stability of maybe in steady amount of patronage to that areas or to the people in that area. But in other part of the world, the presence of dynastic politics can hinder economic development. But what I can say about dynastic politics and democracy is that democracy actually is not as simple as distributing power to many people, you know. Like when we have one man, one vote, it doesn't mean that power will be distributed equally to all people, but some elites can engineer the
They
monopolization
can
of
create a
power.
scenario.
Yeah, they can monopoly the power through legal and democratic way, right? So elections in some countries like Indonesia, for example, elections pave a way for dynastic politics to emerge, right? Because back in Suharto's era, I don't think there's political dynasties at the subnational level. And when we talk about governor and bupatis, right? But after the election, but does it mean that we should abolish direct local elections? No, I don't think we should abolish direct local elections. Again, we only our democratization is only like 20 years old. We need more time to build the civic culture, the democratic culture, you know, to build the sense of ownership to people, the sense of citizenship also among the people. and we cannot, if we abolish the direct local election, it means that we're just looking for shortcuts. And you know, something instant, something shortcut is never good for your health, right? And it's the same also with democracy. If you cut the process now, when people are still learning and finding a way how to improve the system so that the playing field, the electoral playing field, become more stable, more fair to many people who want to enter politics. Keep it that way. We find a way to influence people, find a way to educate people, find a way for potential leader to emerge, not by introducing or not by abolishing direct local elections. I think it's very important because if we, I don't know, in my sense, if we abolish direct local election and we return the process to the DPRD or to the local councils, right? I think the potential for dynastic politics to emerge is even bigger.
It's just a different strategy that they have to assess, and might be more easier for them.
More cheaper, yeah, much cheaper.
You don't have to buy more votes.
Yeah, much cheaper for them. Yeah.
But now let's look at it in more specific terms. We see that the president right now, President Joko Widodo, who in many cases echoed the popularity and charisma that we see in Barack Obama back in 2008. He was also a political outsider. He was not a member of the elite, not a member of the military, a small town mayor who became governor of Jakarta. And now he has shifted his own ideals in a sense, principles in a sense, allowing his son-in-law and son to enter into the political atmosphere. Is that a fair characterization of the president, or is it not?
I think it's just a matter of political survival. After you have to remember, Jokowi is not a party owner, right? Jokowi is a
hold
party
any position in the party
officer, right? Petugas partai.
Petugas partai.
After he stepped down from the office, what would he do after that to maintain his influence in politics? There's nothing, right? He's not a cleric like Abdurrahman Wahid or the vice president. He's not someone who came from military background. He's not party owner. He's not like SBY or Megawati, right? After Jokowi stepped down from the office, what would he do to prolong his power in Indonesia? And I think by allowing Gibran, Bobby, and I think there's some other family members who want to run in local elections. I think maybe it's a power survival logic of Jokowi, you know. So maybe one day Gibran could follow his father's steps. Who knows, right? But the most important thing, the opportunity is now. After Jokowi stepped down from the office, maybe it's very difficult for Gibran or Bobby just to be nominated by the party, right? After Jokowi stepped down from the office, let's say they want to run in 2024 or 2028, right? It's very difficult even for Gibran and Bobby and to nominate themselves, to win the nomination from their party. And so it's a combination of survival, the logic of survival, and also the opportunity that has a very limited time period. Yeah.
So just to clarify for our viewers, the words Bobby and Gibran mean Gibran Raka Buming Raka, who is the eldest son of the president Jokowi, and Bobby Nasution is the son-in-law of the president. Gibran is vying for a candidacy as mayor for Solo, as an area and city in which the president was once mayor himself, and Bobby Nasution is at the moment vying for a candidacy as mayor for Medan. But going back to the idea of political survival, so in this case, the presidency provides a window for influence, provides a window for the masses to consolidate. And on one sense, this is about securing political legacy or perhaps political survival. Is that really the case that perhaps the president wants to do? Does he want to prolong his influence, or is he just vying for a sort of sense of security in that sense?
Maybe both, like preserving the influence and also maintaining his political security. But if he wants to maintain the political security, then he should nominate Gibran not as a mayor but also as the next candidate of the president, right? So I think it's more about maintaining political influence, and also the window of opportunity is very limited for them to build their base in Indonesia. Yeah.
Perhaps he's also borrowing from President Yudhoyono's playbook as well, with the nomination of his own son trying to become governor and then vice president. And again, that's about political survival. But for Yudhoyono's case, it's also about party survival, because Yudhoyono's family really do depend on the Democratic Party for survival. And without the brand name, do you agree that it won't otherwise continue their influence?
I think so.
Is it symbiotic, the Yudhoyono family and the Democratic Party, more so than the Jokowi family and his party? Or are they both symbiotic in different ways?
I don't think they're symbiotic, but it's for Yudhoyono. Basically, for Yudhoyono, the homework is quite big. You know, like he also needs to maintain the party. The party solidarity, or the solidity of the party, and for Jokowi, he doesn't have to do that, but his family is still dependent on the mercy of the Sukarno Putri's family, right? And so they are facing two different kind of challenges.
Maybe right now there is a dilemma. Should I maintain neutrality but at the sense be on the mercy or influence of others, or should I try and develop my own political capital so that I can play this complex political chess that Indonesia is playing?
Probably, yeah.
But perhaps a final take on it. So, political dynasties, good or bad? Or is it a question mark?
It's a question mark. Otherwise, I'll finish my dissertation right now, right? But for me, is it ethical? It's not ethical. It's very clear. I mean, appointing your family when you're in power to a very strategic position, is it ethical? It's not ethical at all. It's not normative and it's not ideal. But the problem is we cannot build an institution, or we cannot influence the process if we are only looking at the normative ideals of what should have happened in the politics, right? What we can do actually is we have to understand the underlying logic of why the politicians build their political dynasties. If we can understand the logic why they want to build political dynasties and how they build their political dynasties, then hopefully we can find a way how to curb the growing numbers of political dynasties in Indonesia. And we have to find a balance between the normative and the practical, empirical fact of that kind of phenomenon. And yeah, it's a big
question mark
and a big homework for Indonesia's democratic activists, actually. Yeah.
All right, thank you so much, Pak Yoes. It's a pleasure to have you
Thank you for
in this
having me
episode. Pak Yoes draws in several important points when it comes to political dynasties. Is it a question of the law? Is it a question of ethics? What's for certain is that political dynasties provide the political capital, stability, and solidarity that Indonesia might need, particularly when it comes to the Indonesian elite. However much it might be permissible to the public, let's not forget that it should elevate democracy. Let's not make sure that it doesn't go back to the Suharto era of development first, democracy later. And with that, we come to a close. Thank you so much for listening to Election Talk and Democracy. I'm Raafi Seiff, signing off, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and to look at the many publications and journals from Perludem, because we always need a good sip of democracy. Thank you, and have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.